I thought that was very well written. I thoroughly enjoyed that chapter, and I plan on reading the rest of this book. I had a meeting with the chief financial officer of a fancy hospital one day, and she was disgusted with one of her staff accountants. She said, "He's such a buffoon. He doesn't understand table manners." And I said, "What are you talking about?" Well, apparently she took her staff accountants out to a Christmas lunch, very formal, fine dining. And she took her staff of 7, so there were 8 of them. And they sat at a round table that sat 8 people. Now, those of you who have been to fancy weddings probably know what I'm talking about. Oftentimes they use those round tables that seat 8 people. And if it's formal dining, fine dining, there's plates everywhere, there's utensils everywhere, there's glasses everywhere. And unless you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to get confused on which is your bread plate and which is your own water glass and so forth. So here they are, they're sitting at this round table, all of them, and the waiter comes down and pours their water glasses. Well, immediately, one of her accountants, he's kind of into working out and so forth, he's probably always thirsty. Well, he immediately reached down and grabbed a water glass and drank from it. Unfortunately, he reached with his left hand and grabbed the wrong water glass. The rest of the staff was horrified, and they looked at their boss like, what should we do? Should we tell this guy that he drank wrong water glass and embarrass him, or should we just pretend nothing happened? Well, without saying anything, the CFO, she reached out with her left hand and grabbed the wrong water glass as well, and they all followed suit and drank from the wrong water glass for the entire meal. Well, afterwards, she was a little offended. She was a little angry, and she said, "How can you promote such a buffoon? He doesn't even understand basic table etiquette," and so forth. Now, this might sound kind of harsh, but it is the reality. Especially in the business world. In reality, people will judge you by your table manners. For example, when I was graduating from college, I had a 6-hour job interview with a prestigious company. It was actually the largest systems integration consulting firm in the world, and it was a very prestigious firm. Well, 4 hours into my interview, they took me to lunch. There were 7 of them and 1 of me. So again, we ate at one of those round tables that sat 8 people. Plates everywhere, fancy silverware everywhere, glasses everywhere, and so forth. And unless you knew what you were doing, it was pretty easy to get confused with which was your bread plate and which was your water glass and so forth. Well, the waiter came out and poured our water, and I noticed that no one reached for their water glass. Another minute goes by, no one reached for their water glass. Another minute goes by, and still no one reached for their water glass. And then I realized they were probably testing me to see which glass I would grab. Well, confidently, I reached with my right hand and grabbed the right water glass. I guarantee you, if I would have grabbed the wrong water glass, I would have never gotten that job. In reality, people judge you by your table manners. So how did I know at the age of 24 which water glass to grab or which bread plate to use and so forth? Did they teach me that in business school? No, although they should have probably taught me that and taught everybody else that. But I actually read Emily Post's Etiquette manual at a young age. You see, I grew up in a household that had a lot of books. And in our second largest room in our house, we had a bookshelf that went from the floor to the ceiling all along the entire wall, and there were tons and tons of books there. Well, one day at the age of 11, I was musing over all the books that I never read before, and I noticed a book I had never noticed before. It was a big, thick book that looked really old. In reality, it was the biggest book on the shelf, and I was surprised I'd never noticed it before, and I thought to myself, what is that book? So I went and grabbed it, and it was titled Emily Post's Etiquette Manual. And at the time, I didn't know what etiquette meant. I looked it up in the dictionary. It means something like common customs of good manners in society. I think that's kind of a basic definition for it. And this book was big. It was over 1,000 pages long. It's actually written in the 1920s and so forth. And it's a very popular book. I was amazed by it. I was looking through it, And I didn't realize there were so many manners or so many rules associated with society. I saw how to plan a wedding, how to write thank you notes. I even saw illustrations of women walking with books on their heads to practice a proper posture, a proper way to walk and so forth. But one chapter caught my eye, and it was about setting the table. See, that was one of my tasks that I had to do at the age of 11. I had to set the table every single night. Now, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know there was a formal procedure and so forth. So I would just basically just grab a fork, spoon, knife, plate, bowl, and glass and just kind of haphazardly threw it on the table. But I was amazed how in depth this thing went. And I was embarrassed that I had been doing this wrong all the while, and I immediately corrected my errant ways. I mean, I learned that the forks are on the left hand, knife and spoon on the right hand. If you have a dessert, the dessert fork goes on top. If you're eating oysters, the oyster fork goes on the right, and so forth. And the water glass is always on the right hand side. Throughout my childhood, I loved reading from that book, and if you have an interest, I'll have the link in the description. It's still available now. They're on the 17th edition, and it is amazing just how many manners or rules there are out there. Interestingly, I was taking my kids to the library about every week, and we were wandering through the bookshelves, and I came across this book. Emily Post's The Etiquette Advantage in Business. I didn't know such a book existed, and I looked at the authors. It's Peggy Post and Peter Post, and they happen to be the great-grandchildren of Emily Post. And this talks about business ethics and business etiquette, and it looked like a really interesting book. There's a lot of interesting chapters. The ethical you, how to be ethical in the workplace, dress and grooming, you and your co-workers, how to get along with your co-workers properly, you and your workspace, you and your supervisors, the smart manager, telecommuting from the home office, pleasing the customer, business gifts, business events, table manners, navigating the meal, how to speak on the telephone, how to be a good conversationalist, and so forth. Well, the chapter that caught my attention was table manners. So I read that, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And there's actually an essay in that chapter titled Chivalry Now Approaching the Dining Table. Now this reminds me of when I went to college, one of my professors was an accounting professor. It was a woman, and she grew up in the South. And she said, in the South, chivalry is very popular. Men opened up the doors for women, and men pull out the chair for women, and so forth. Well, she worked for a prestigious accounting firm in her 20s in Atlanta, Georgia, and she said all the time men would open the door for her, and all the time they would pull the chair open for her, and so forth. And she absolutely hated it. She felt it was sexist. She never said anything about it. She never complained about it, but deep down it really bothered her. Well, that shocked me when I was in college. I had never heard of such a thing. Now, I was always taught you're supposed to open the door for women, and you're supposed to pull the chair for women, and so forth. I had no idea that a woman in the business field might be offended by it. And from that point on, I was kind of confused in the workplace whether I should open up the door for a woman, or whether I should pull the chair for a woman, and so forth. So I didn't know really what to do. But I loved this essay, and this is a response. So this is what they wrote. One of the hardest problems for men and women in today's world is drawing a distinction between a purely social setting and a business setting when it comes to amenities such as holding chairs. In our social lives, a man is expected to hold a chair for a woman when they are sitting down to a meal. When sitting down for a business breakfast, lunch, or dinner, however, the same gesture may be perceived as sexist. The man is caught in a trap. He can easily make the error of trying to hold a chair when a woman doesn't want him to, or just as easily make the mistake of not holding a chair for a woman who believes such a gesture is an integral part of a man's role, whatever the setting. What to do? Here's the answer. Communication is the answer. As the man and woman approach the table, the man simply says, Can I get the chair for you? Now she can make the choice. Why, yes. How thoughtful. Thank you. Or, no thank you, but it was nice of you to offer. Instead of a confusing, awkward moment occurring, the situation passes without a hitch, and they can focus on building a better relationship, which, after all, is the primary purpose of any business-related encounter. I thought that was very well written. I thoroughly enjoyed that chapter, and I plan on reading the rest of this book. And hopefully when I read the rest of the book, maybe I'll come out with another video titled Business Ethics or Business Etiquette Part 2. Now, if you have an interest in learning more about this book, I'll go ahead and include the link in the description below. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And etiquette really intrigues me, and it's certainly helped me get my first job out of college, and it's certainly helped me in the business world, and hopefully it can help you, those of you who are working in the business world or just in social settings, because in reality, people will judge you based on your table manners as well as other manners as well. Hopefully that helped. Hopefully you enjoyed that. God bless, and hopefully I'll see you again. Thank you.